I've had 6 D&Cs and no abortion. This is a quote from our very special guest, Laura Ricketts. Laura Ricketts is going to be sharing her story of hope and helping us to have a conversation that is very timely today, where there is so much confusion around the word miscarriage and abortion amongst celebrities, mainstream media, and the medical community alike. We want to bring light to this conversation, clarify things. We hope this podcast episode allows you to have a resource that perhaps you could share with someone who might be confused about these words, especially at this time in history. That is what's coming up today on the Fearless Future podcast, presented by the Guiding Star Project.
Welcome to the Fearless Future podcast, where your hosts Lisa Canning and Leah Jacobson will explore what the world would look like if women didn't fear pregnancy. Through education, community, and healthcare solutions, Guiding Star Project strives to make this a reality at our physical centers across the United States. Join us.
Leah Jacobson, I'm bringing you on first. Hello.
Good morning,
How
Lisa.
are you? Why is this conversation so important? When we were prepping for this episode, we had many a conversation about what we wanted to highlight and why this is important right now. So Leah, why is this particular conversation so important?
Well, gosh, Lisa, you and I were texting back and forth over the past week, really, about the confusion, just all of the confusion right now about, miscarriage in particular, women feeling incredibly confused and conflicted about the election results. I think that's the other very timely reason right now, is that there has become almost this fever pitch of fear of what does this mean for women's health care? Under this new administration, are we going to be able to access care when we lose our very wanted baby? Are we going to be able to get help in the emergency rooms? And you and I have been fielding questions. I've had several long text message conversations, even over the weekend, of people sharing stories and just, genuine confusion and fear. And so I think this episode is critical for us to highlight, first of all, what the words even mean, because there's a lot of we don't even know what the words mean right now. And then, share a story of what this looks like in action, and talk about the laws a little bit.
And why is Laura Ricketts such a unique voice in this conversation?
Well, I'll let Laura, speak for herself a little bit, but Laura has been a friend of mine now for over a decade, and I've watched Laura go through some of the most dramatic pregnancy losses I have ever seen. Just truly, on the edge of life, in her attempt to bring life forward into the world, and the medical care that she received to preserve her life, that was not able to preserve the lives of her babies. And she has had several losses, which I'll let her share more about with you. But her openness still in all of it to being open to life has always just been so inspiring to me. But also her role as a bereavement doula has given her a really interesting front row seat to other women's losses and the experiences of working with healthcare providers in emergency settings, in the ER, and not even dramatic, ER settings, but knowing, that a baby has an adverse fetal diagnosis, that they're not going to survive labor and delivery, and the planning for that death. And she just has a very different outlook on life and death and pregnancy. So I'm excited to have her on.
We hope this conversation is one, like I mentioned, that if you have a conversation with someone and they're like, this current administration will not help someone who's miscarried. We hope that this conversation helps to clarify things. Perhaps it will help to have a conversation, because again, these terms matter. What we are talking about in terms of medical abortions and spontaneous abortions, these words really matter. So we're going to dive into all of that today. Laura Ricketts, welcome to the Fearless Future podcast. How are you?
Thanks. I'm doing great. I'm excited to talk to you ladies today.
It's beautiful to see you. So for anyone who might not know you and your story, could you, I was going to say briefly introduce yourself, but you feel free to just dive into what makes you an expert in this topic and why you bring a very special lens to this conversation.
Okay. Well, I'd say that my expertise, and like, first of all, no one wants to be an expert, right? In pregnancy loss and in grief. And yet here we are. Um, it started out personal. I have had 8 losses total, all very different. Some, like Leah said, very dramatic. Some that were life-threatening for me, more than a few that were life-threatening for me. And throughout that experience, I gained a very personal wisdom, but it really wasn't until I attended a dear friend of mine who was experiencing an early second trimester loss herself. And being with her in the hospital, being with her through the days leading up to that, when she delivered her little baby who was born sleeping, that I kind of sensed that there was a need in the larger community that, while going through it myself, I recognized, but having experienced some healing in the meantime, and then being present for my friend, made me realize that perhaps there was a lot of learning, apprenticing, and became a birth and bereavement doula. And so through that, uh, on a professional level, I gained a lot more wisdom, a lot more experience, and the meshing of the two, the personal and the professional, has at times given me a rather dubious title. I think I've been introduced as the leading expert on pregnancy loss in the pro-life movement before. Again, not something you ever say, like, I'm going to grow up and that's what I want to be. But that perspective is so needed, and women deserve to have during these really vulnerable times. And so being able to hold that space for them is really a gift. And I'm always honored to do that. So hopefully that was brief enough.
The mindset coach in me wants to remind everyone that we are going to be tackling some topics that might be very sensitive. And so we hold a lot of space for all of you. We also want to be very honest about this conversation. So Laura, thank you for coming and just sharing so openly. I'd like to start at the beginning. And go to that first experience. Maybe you could just share a little bit about that very first time that you had to make the decision to have a D&C, and what happened.
So the first time, I would say I didn't really make the decision. In a certain sense, it was made for me, informed consent and all. Our third loss. So I have 4 living children. They're all old and teenagers now. And then we started experiencing all of our losses. And so the first 2 were the least dramatic of all of them. We lost Claire at 17 weeks, and then I had an early miscarriage at 6 weeks with Francis. And then I was pregnant with little Lolek is his name, and I was about 12 weeks, 12, 13, and started experiencing what I at that point knew. Was at home. I had gone to the emergency room. It was confirmed, yes, your baby doesn't have a heartbeat. Those words, it doesn't matter how many times you hear them, right? When you hear them, your heart just stops for a moment. And we went through that. One of my dear friends, who was a doula, decided to spend the night with me. I delivered Lolek at home, and then things kind of went from sad to scary. And I started hemorrhaging very badly, and I had retained a placenta. Ended up being rushed to the emergency room, the crash unit, lots of people, lots of doctors. And because I was hemorrhaging so badly, there wasn't time to get me to an OR, and there wasn't time for anesthesia. And so an OB came in and essentially performed a D&C with no anesthesia. And don't recommend. 0 out of 10 for the experience, 10 out of 10 for the results. So I'm still here. And then there was a lot of recovery and blood transfusions after that. So that was my very first experience of it, the whole thing. And I could tell you, but yeah, that was the first. So.
Oh, Leah, we can't hear you. Let's try that again.
I'm coming. I
you're
had
on.
to unmute myself. I muted myself because I was listening to Laura and I was having a little bit of trouble with her audio. I don't know if anyone else was experiencing trouble with audio, but I muted myself so I could hear her more clearly, and then I started talking and you couldn't hear me. Laura, we've been friends, throughout some of these experiences. And I think one of the things that has always struck me about your approach to miscarriage and loss has been that you even after having very dramatic losses that resulted in you were having hemorrhaging, it was very clear that you were maybe the baby's heartbeat was no longer detected, you had already lost your baby, you still tended to allow nature to take its course. Is that a belief that you hold? Because I think what I'm hearing right now a little bit in the media and a little bit in the fear is that if you have a miscarriage, or even if it looks like you're going to have a miscarriage, even if you haven't started spotting yet, that a D&C is the way you end a pregnancy. But you've always had a different kind of more hands-off approach. I don't know if you want to share it all about that.
Yeah, sure. And I think that's a really important point, because I think the climate right now on social media, in any form of media really, that right now is that you can't trust women's bodies, whether they are carrying a healthy pregnancy to term. Somehow the message is given to women that you still can't trust your body. You need to fear pregnancy. And it's the same thing for loss, that there is this narrative that is being shared right now that in loss, you can trust your body even less. And I disagree. Even given my experiences, women's bodies have a wisdom to them. They have a wisdom in pregnancy. They have a wisdom through delivery. They have a wisdom in loss as well. Your body knows what to do. The dramatic experiences, the medical interventions that might be necessary are exceptions. They are not the rule. And I think it's always important that we give nature the last word. And in that, in trusting your body's also going to let you know when it's time to involve something that is interventive, when it's time to go to the hospital, when it's time to call a doctor. And skipping steps, just like we have that cascade of interventions during labor and delivery for a healthy, full-term baby. The more interventions you introduce, the more interventions you're going to need, the more medical it becomes, the less in control of your eventual delivery you are. It's the same thing for loss. Loss is still labor, right? It doesn't matter how early or how late it is. Essentially, it's labor. You're delivering a baby. The baby's just smaller. And so the more medical interventions you introduce early on, the more complicated it becomes. And the scarier I think it becomes, because in all 6 of the D&Cs I've had, 4 of them I had after I had delivered the baby, because there were complications that followed. 2 of them I had because the situation I was in at the time determined that would be a safer route for me. But it was only until I was trusting what that situation was, right, that I was able to make that determination that, okay, in this particular circumstance, this is the right decision. And that's how you have to, I think that's how you have to approach it. That was a long answer, but hopefully it was
it's perfect. It's perfect. It leads right into this question right now, because we titled this, somewhat provocatively, because we're trying to help explain the difference between the D&C as a medical procedure and the D&C as an elective abortion. So, you would say you've had 6 D&Cs, and actually interesting, 4 of them didn't even involve removing a baby. It actually involved removing contents of your uterus that were retained prior, or, post delivery of your baby. None of your babies were, you wanted all of your babies. Yes. So it's not really anything to do with whether or not the baby is wanted or unwanted. A D&C procedure is simply that, a medical procedure.
I mean, this might sound like a crass analogy, but I could tell people, right, I'm going to go get a root canal, and people would be like, oh, okay, I had a D&C. It's simply like you said, a medical procedure. On its own, it's neutral. It's morally neutral. The intent and the circumstances are where we cross that line.
Yes.
So this might be a great place to pause and just bring up what we're seeing in today's culture. So Chrissy Teigen's story is the one that comes. She's married to John Legend. She's a celebrity. You're not familiar with her, actress. And People magazine ran a story where she shared, I didn't realize I had an abortion. But what she had was a miscarriage. And so just to be very, very clear, there is a difference between a spontaneous abortion and a medical abortion. So Laura, can you and Leah, can we dive in and just give some definitions around these two distinct? So very clear, we want to make this very clear. They're distinct, they are different. So whoever wants to go first.
Well, I can start with, typically we refer to it as an elective abortion. We elect to end the pregnancy. Abortion, in the medical sort of definition of the word, is the pregnancy is being aborted. It's ended, like mission done, like abort, like abort the mission. Like we're no longer going to be pregnant. And your body can make the call and say, chemically, we're not here. Hormonally, we're not here. Like something's not right. We're not doing this any longer. And your body makes that decision. Whether or not you want it to make that decision is really beyond your control. And that would be a spontaneous abortion that is directed naturally by your body. And that is what we refer to as a miscarriage. Versus an elective abortion is where we say, I elect to stop this pregnancy at whatever stage we're at. I am choosing to end this pregnancy that is viable. There is a living baby involved in this. The hormones are working in our favor. And there can be a number of reasons women do this. Many women, maybe do this because there's a fetal anomaly. They think this pregnancy might end badly. It's mistimed. It's all the reasons that women give for elective abortions. That's what we're talking about, in these laws, these heartbeat laws that have been passed in some states, the human life amendments, things that have been passed in different states. That's what we're talking about, is the intentional ending of a viable pregnancy. That's an elective abortion. When we say abortion, legally, that's what we're referring to, not miscarriage.
Why do we think there's confusion? And Laura, feel free to add some onto that definition. But what I'm really perplexed by is stories like Chrissy's. And there are other stories. There's a One Tree Hill actress, forgive me, her name is not coming to mind, but she mentioned recently, I've had 2 abortions. One, but when you learn her story, one was elective and one was a miscarriage. And the conversations around this timing of the election, women are saying things like, I'm not going to get the care that I need if I have a miscarriage under this current administration. And of course, again, so much confusion. So Laura, why is there, please add anything else you want to the definitions, but why do you think there's so much confusion right now about these 2 terms?
I think a lot of it comes down to 2 factors. One is paperwork, quite honestly. When you go to the OB, right, and let's say you're newly pregnant, right, I have to fill out all this paperwork, and it's like buying a house because it's like this thick and it's medical histories. On there, it will ask you, it just simply says, abortions. And some places will break it down into spontaneous, elective. Others, it will simply say abortions. And so right off the bat, the medical community, in trying to be clear for their own purposes, introduces confusion to us laity, right, in what we're talking about. If a woman goes in for miscarriage care and receives back the summary of her visit or the different codes that are sent to the insurance companies, anything on her electronic charts, it's going to say the word abortion is going to be there. And that introduces more confusion and sometimes just fear, like, oh my goodness, did I just do something I didn't intend to do? So I think that's one factor. It comes down to paperwork and medical definitions, which we need doctors to know specifically, right, our medical history so they can give us the care that we need. But maybe there is a conversation to be had there at some point about, can we get a little bit more clear, please, so we're not confusing and hurting people with our terms. But I think the other side of it comes from the pro-life movement. Back when the understanding of what an abortion was sort of being talked about for the first time, we started to hear for the first time the phrases or the terms D&E and D&C.
Yep.
And the pro-life movement, in their effort to try to educate, started equating the D&C and the D&E procedures with abortions. And so this misunderstanding really started to sink in, particularly for, I think, pro-life people, in that a D&C equals an abortion, a D&E equals an abortion. And so now we almost have to undo that because that's incorrect. So I think it's coming from two different places there. And now we have the climate that we're in now where we don't know how to accurately talk about these things.
Yeah, and interesting. I would agree with you, Laura. I think I remember hearing D&C used synonymously, or D&E used synonymously with the phrase, with elective abortion, and which has always been problematic. It was always incorrect. It should never have been used that way. We should have checked ourselves, a very long time ago for those in the pro-life movement that were using that language. I will say, though, I've been, kind of pleasantly surprised, I guess, by how clarifying the language has actually been legally in these laws. A few stories were sent to me over the weekend of a teenage girl in Texas who was 6 months pregnant and wanted her baby. It was a very wanted pregnancy, and she, I believe her name was Nevaeh Crane, visited 3 different emergency rooms in Texas after, these abortion restrictions, abortion bans, so-called abortion bans went into place in Texas, and received substandard care in all 3 places, and she ended up dying of sepsis. They absolutely missed what was going on. They initially diagnosed her with a UTI and a strep infection, and sent her on her way. And she obviously had abdominal pain, all these things that were pointing to a major problem. By the time she had come into the 3rd ER, there were no fetal tones. The baby had died. They still, at that point, didn't elect, to do anything life-saving for her, and she and her baby died, Nevaeh Crane. And so we're seeing this all over right now across all kinds of headlines. I saw it on NBC News, I think, just the other day. Texas teenager dies after seeking care at 3 emergency rooms and not receiving care. And that, people sending it to me, well-meaning, really concerned people that care about life, care about maternal outcomes, very concerned. And it only took just a tiny bit of digging to realize that this had nothing to do with abortion access and had to do with a much bigger problem that, we've been talking about for years here at Guiding Star, that women's healthcare in general is terrible. Our prenatal care tends to be very substandard. And that abortion, in a sense, has been masking providers that really don't know how to care for pregnant women. And we're seeing it now. These women are showing up pregnant, and these providers have not known how to care for them because they've had that sort of fail-safe of, oh, we just do an abortion in this instant. I was able to look up actually the language with the help of some friends down in the Texas Alliance for Life. I said, what does the law say? And they sent it to me. They sent the Health and Safety Code chapter, very clearly, chapter 245.002. It defines really clearly the exceptions for what medical providers can and cannot do in the state of Texas. And I'm going to drop the link to it here in the chat because I was assuming that there had to just be, so much ambiguity that these providers, are struggling to understand the laws, that they can't make sense of it. But it is so clear what is allowed and what isn't allowed. And it gives the providers, it gives these medical professionals autonomy to make decisions on, this is the point now where this is life-threatening. We need to end this pregnancy, which, by the way, D&Cs are not the only way we end pregnancies. In the case of this girl, Nevaeh Crane, she was 6 months pregnant. You guys, how many of us know babies at 6 months that have survived, that have been delivered? They could have done an early delivery of this baby early on and had a much different outcome. She did not need to die. But providers, for whatever reason, tied their own hands and said, we don't know what to do.
Yeah, here's another example from the New York Times. They had miscarriages and new abortion laws obstructed treatment. And the article goes on to say how one example of a woman, she went in for a miscarriage and was treated very compassionately. But then later on, they're basically blaming the reversal of Roe v. Wade, saying that at another hospital, she was denied treatment. This article here, I'll drop this one too. The confusion is, to your point, Leah, in the links that you just dropped, like, why is this so confusing? I'm still very perplexed as to even how some medical professionals are almost using the laws to, like you just said, tie their hands. It's like, well, no, we can't do that. But when we're dealing with a woman whose baby has already passed, and they're saying we're tying our hand, like, someone help clarify this for me. Looking on the outside, I just don't understand the confusion. Laura, why are we so confused?
Well, I think what we're seeing right now is almost an exacerbation of a problem that has been there for a very long time. And I mean, Guiding Star has been at the forefront of trying to tackle the disparities in women's healthcare, right, for quite a while. And miscarriage care, right, in this country. And up until this point, when there hasn't been a microscope, right, on doctors, a microscope on healthcare, women have quite honestly been left to try to either advocate for themselves or navigate a system that they don't understand during a time when they are very vulnerable and very sad. It's part of why bereavement doulas are actually a thing. If our medical system wasn't what it was, you wouldn't need me. And that's just the truth. I can think of my own experiences and the women that I've served, and walking into a doctor's office, there's no heartbeat, and not being given options, not having it explained to women what is going on with their bodies. Women who are told that their body can't handle a miscarriage naturally on its own, which is not true. And so we already have a problem that has been festering. And now I think, Lisa, I think you said something very true, that doctors don't have abortion as a fallback in some of these places. And that's really sad when you are a medical professional and your catch-all for your inability to treat a woman and her child is abortion. We have a much, much bigger problem in our medical community. And so I think that's some of what we're seeing now, that the disparities in our system, the lack of adequate care for women is being highlighted. It has nothing to do with laws that are or not being passed. The care hasn't been there all along. Now we have the added issue of not understanding the phrases and not understanding the terms, and women are scared.
And I would add that, there is a certain obligation when a state passes a law to make sure that there is clarity around this law. And I think Texas has been working to do that. And I believe not that long ago, I'm just trying to find the document, but I believe there was clarity that was made on these laws. The Supreme Court of Texas ruled recently, clarifying, the doctor's role and their ability, which, by the way, I find this very fascinating. There have been almost 120 abortions since the state ban went into effect in 2020 is when the heartbeat law went, and then after Dobbs, it was updated in 2022 to be, a little bit more restrictive, some people would say. But since 2022 or 2020, I guess, there have been 120 almost abortions that have been performed and reported, and not one of those doctors has been prosecuted because it was determined that these were life-saving, that this was a medically necessary act. And the Supreme Court of Texas just upheld that and said, yeah, this is clarifying here. So I'm hoping now that that really, removes the fear from doctors that are not treating women in the ER when they come in. There is no excuse for it. I would also say, it is the state has a bit of an obligation to clarify their laws. But anytime a new law is passed in any industry, if you're in manufacturing and a new manufacturing law is passed, you figure it out pretty quick. If you're the provider, if you're the one doing that thing, you hire your lawyers, you figure it out. These hospital systems, these medical credentialing bodies, we should be looking at ACOG. We should be looking at the licensing bodies and saying, how does this affect your medical professionals in this state? How does this affect their license? How they may practice medicine in this state? And we really didn't see that from ACOG. We've not seen any really clear explanation. It's what I have seen more so has been a bit of fear mongering, a bit of no one's going to get the care they need. Women are going to die. Instead of saying, what does the law actually say? Because I'm looking at the law right here and it defines this very clearly. Abortion means the act of using or prescribing an instrument, a drug, a medicine, or any other substance, device, or means with the intent to cause the death of an unborn child of a woman known to be pregnant. The term does not include birth control devices or oral contraceptives. An act is not an abortion if the act is done with the intent to A, save the life or preserve the health of an unborn child, B, remove a dead unborn child whose death was caused by spontaneous abortion, or C, remove an ectopic pregnancy. That is right in the law. So anybody who is responsible to guide those in this profession, to me, if you're not doing that, there's a negligence. You're allowing confusion and you are putting women's lives at risk.
I want to bring something up. And again, I want to be very delicate. Is part of the confusion an attempt to draw sympathy on abortion? To make it almost conflated with a miscarriage. The confusion, I didn't know I had an abortion. And almost using the two words interchangeably, that might be too strong to say, but my point is the conflation, is it to draw sympathy and make abortion less morally reprehensible, to those who want it to be something that is a right for all? Does anyone have an opinion on that? Is that part of this here?
I'll let you go, Laura.
No, in fact, for many years, I did some work with women who used to work in the abortion industry. And in working with these women as they left their jobs in that industry, more than a few of them spoke about memos that were circulated, particularly within Planned Parenthood. And the memo's goal was to change the language of our culture from abortion, because that word is very charged, right? And so this memo directed their employees to start using phrases like miscarriage care, managed miscarriage. That was a really big one. So a managed miscarriage equals abortion, but we're not going to call it that now. We're going to use the term miscarriage. So yes, that's absolutely part of where the confusion is coming from, because there is a deliberate attempt to change our language and to confuse our language. You're right.
So let's be clear, everyone, what Leah just wrote, that was from the state of Texas, right, Leah? What you just read, excuse me?
Yeah.
So very, very clear. That states exactly what an abortion is and exactly what an abortion isn't. And again, I just want to invite us to just pause for a minute. If this is confusing to you personally, or you have had conversations with friends where this is very confusing, just please, reach out. Like, there are people that we can point you to that can have, people like Laura, who, as a bereavement doula, walks with people through pain and loss. There are people that we can direct you to. So please feel free to reach out to us via DM, because I think if we just kind of go with the flow, so to speak, right? If we keep sort of allowing language to evolve without challenge, we're not headed for a great future. Like we really do have to, all of us collectively, and this is what I think makes Guiding Star very special. Not only are we trying to revolutionize women's healthcare, but we're also trying to do it from the angle of, can we do this as a collective force? Because the more of us that speak up and challenge, and it's a hard time, I acknowledge, having these conversations online can be hard, but having these conversations and challenging people, like, no, these are different things you're talking about. We're conflating two terms. These are two different, distinct. We're talking about a baby that is passed spontaneously and then choosing to end the life of a baby. Those are two separate things. I don't know, ladies, what do you think? Like, do we all need to speak up on this, even though it's hard?
Yeah, the other piece of it, you guys, there actually is there is a little common ground on some of the statistics that are coming out. I don't know how they're taking these statistics. I read something from Michael New that was really just looking at, which was fascinating and eye-opening, at how statistics are being gathered across different states and how what some places count as a maternal mortality or an infant demise or a maternal demise versus what other states. It's very different. So it's hard to like make generalized broad statements at all right now because we don't even have accurate statistics. But something that I think is hopeful for us in this moment, here at Guiding Star, and people that really care about maternal and infant outcomes, there was a recent article that said there was a 59% increase in the state of Texas since these laws in maternal, negative maternal outcomes. And again, I think there is something that we should pause and say, I don't know if those numbers are correct. I'm not going to say, yes, those are correct numbers, because after looking at the research, I was like, oh, those might not actually be accurate. But I do want to point out, we've been getting women's healthcare wrong for a really long time. Like, I am not going to defend America's birthing practices and our maternal mortality rates because they're terrible. We look at other developed countries. We look at how birth is handled. We look at how women and babies are doing, and we're not doing well. And so I think here, this is also an opportunity for us to say, people are caring right now. People are caring genuinely right now about maternal outcomes. And so we need to, shine the light on, actually, this has been going wrong for many decades. We've been the worst of developed nations for a long time, and it's time to change that, which, we believe is central to the midwifery model of care and midwifery. So anyways, I just want to throw that out there because I think that's the opportunity in this conversation, is to fix what's wrong.
And that maybe for the first time, there is that opportunity for that larger conversation, because the larger conversation's already taking place. It's an opportunity for us to start framing that, to bring that to light, that women deserve better than what they've been getting all along. And what are we going to do about that, I think, is the question we should be asking.
Because if we think about this, even just logically, if we just take a logical approach, okay, so more babies are being born in Texas now because abortions, are illegal after 6 weeks. So if you're in a place, I'm not saying Texas is birth practice, don't come after me, Texas people, but I am just going to say you've got some higher mortality rates than other areas of the country, and lower breastfeeding rates and higher postpartum rates in other areas of the country. So there might be something wrong with what's happening in Texas anyhow, or other southern states or other places where these bans are happening. If more women now are going to be pregnant and carrying pregnancies to term, we are going to see more maternal mortality rates if you haven't fixed the root cause in the system that's not great. So, that's my hot take, I guess, is we have to overhaul the women's healthcare system. Pregnancy, labor, and delivery is scary in a lot of places in our country, and we can't ignore that. Yeah, we got to get the terms right, and we have to be honest, but we also have to look at, is there a problem here? And I think there is.
No, I agree. Go ahead, Lisa.
I have a question for both of you. It's totally, I gave you no warning, so I recognize I'm putting you both completely on the spot. Leah, I actually asked you this the other day, so you have already answered this, but Laura, I'm putting you completely on the spot. If you could get President Trump, or President-elect Trump's ear, for 20 minutes on this topic, you've only got 20 minutes. They've got to be very valuable. what would you want him to hear on this topic of revolutionizing women's healthcare in America?
No warning. Okay.
Let's hear your policy, Laura.
No, but you know what though? I still think I don't need to think about that answer too hard, because if I had 20 minutes, I think I would tell him straight up that women's healthcare is broken in this country, and that trying to fix it the same way we've been trying to fix it over and over is insanity. And that what women need are midwives. What women need are doulas. What women need are options and actual choices and truly informed consent to what's happening with their bodies. That women deserve to be empowered and to hear that those in places of power trust their feminine abilities, and that our country does not respect the feminine abilities of women, and that it's time we change that. We need better policies in place for family leave, maternal and paternal. We need more access and options for women to work from home if they need to work, or to not work. Let's fix the things that are breaking our family, that are making women choose between a system that has already failed them and nothing. They don't have a choice. So that's what I would tell him.
Oof, that's
Amen.
Them's fighting words, Laura. I love it. Leah, you had the benefit of a little bit of prep because I asked you this question privately last week. But is there anything you want to share with our broader audience from that response?
I mean, I think what I would like is finally to have a seat at the table. You know, who is making the decisions and the policies at the highest levels of what insurance is going to reimburse for women? Who is, you know, helping us decide what is defined as reproductive care? You know, like all the sort of definitions that we've just been living with for the last 50 years in this medical, or this, you know, legal and medical framework of what women's healthcare is. It's not serving women well. We're not healthier. We're not happier. Sure, we have sort of choices, but really the choice is, you know, work or not work, or, you know, like it's just it's become very narrow. Our choices have become very narrow. So, you know, as a true kind of feminist in a sense, like I think we need a seat at the table. Women who are living in their unaltered natural female bodies, their fertile bodies, to say, this is the way we are naturally made. We don't need to fix this. You need to fix that. Like, let's fix culture and policy to fit us.
And this is what we're trying to do here at the Guiding Star Project. And so I just want to invite you, as you're listening, if this is on your heart, if you're like, yes, Lisa, Leah, Laura, this is what I want to, can I invite you just to consider donating? guidingstarproject.com/donate. This is what we're on a mission to do, both on the ground level in terms of the actual healthcare. We have our very first birth center in the Tampa Bay area, which we are so excited about. Our centers across the nation, in Texas, in Minnesota. Every time I do this, Leah, I leave somebody out. In Texas, in Minnesota, in the state of Iowa, the state of Florida. I think that's it. Have I got them
New
all?
Mexico.
Yes. New Mexico. It's like naming my children. I don't know why I can't keep it to memory. There's just so many, and they're all doing such incredible things. And we need you. We need you to link arms with us. And so if you believe in this conversation, if you believe that we can make a change and it's possible, please donate. guidingstarproject.com/donate. Ladies, I could talk to you all day long, and I'm sure people could listen to you all day long, listen to us all day long. What are some final thoughts on this topic? Anything else you wanted to share that you haven't had a chance yet?
I think that I always like to take a moment when we speak of loss, when we speak of hard things, right? Miscarriages or stillbirths or a pregnancy loss. That can hit really hard if it's something that you have experienced, if you've recently experienced that, if you have had to live that reality and are still healing. And so for anyone who has listened and that's where you're at, first I want to say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what you have gone through. And I'm sorry for the hard work that I know healing is. But I want you to know that healing is possible. and that you are made to heal. That if you find yourself struggling, hurting, and don't know where to go with that, that there are places and people and resources who are there for you. The Guiding Star Project, right? Women like me who do what we do. Please don't ever hesitate to reach out for that help. We as women, we need each other. We were never made to mother. We were never made to exist in isolation. We need community. And if you don't have community to walk with you through this time, find your community, because we're here. And I also want to just put out there that whatever your experiences may have been, they matter. Your experience matters. Your baby matters and matters. And you don't hear that from anywhere else. I want you to hear that today. And that's what I'd like to share to wrap up.
Oh, and just listeners, please, if you want to learn more about Laura and the incredible work that she is doing, you can visit her website at Philomena Birth. That's FILUMENA birth.com. We're so grateful for the work that you do. Both Leah and I have experienced miscarriages. Mine was right around this time, actually, 2 years ago. Halloween is always particularly difficult for me because it was right at Halloween. It was like just trying to get, kids of course are excited for Halloween. So, I just remember so palpably like so much courage to kind of just get up and help kids get in costumes and whatnot. So, and I know, Leah, you've expressed similar things right around the date of your miscarriage, that it's palpable. Like it's you feel it. You feel sore arms. So.
Yeah. Again, like Laura, I want to, just what you just said there, that we see you kind of thing. Like we are not women without a heart here in terms of that. We have had those losses ourselves. We've buried our babies. We visit, gravestones. We've had these hard talks with our other children about their missing sibling. And we've been there. We've cried many tears over these babies. And maybe you're not somebody that has actually cried those tears. Maybe you haven't really had the space to process it. And maybe it's something that you think, well, that was for the best. We come from a lot of different backgrounds and a lot of different places culturally and, emotionally, and just our space for it on how we handle these losses. And so there's a lot of room for conversation. What there isn't room for right now is fear mongering for no point. Like that's the thing. There are girls right now, there are young women right now that are becoming pregnant, and we don't need to scare them unnecessarily because of something beyond their control, such as an election result. There is nothing that we've seen in this upcoming administration that will actually risk girls' lives getting the care they might need if something were to go wrong. Our doctors and our ERs are ready and prepared for you. But like what Laura said a little bit earlier, our bodies are very wise. And usually a miscarriage is going to pass naturally on its own without much risk. So we pray for all the pregnant women out there, just pray it goes well.
Well, my friends, we hope this conversation was helpful. Please let us know. Leave us a review wherever you like to listen to podcasts. We go live typically Mondays at 11 a.m. East, 10 a.m. Central on Facebook and YouTube. And then this podcast is uploaded to wherever you love to listen to podcasts after the fact. We have another very special event this Thursday. This Thursday night, we are continuing this conversation of revolutionizing women's healthcare with a live webcast where myself, Leah, our dear friend Mark Cavalier from our Guiding Star Southwest location will be joining, and plus some very special guests to be announced. We will be continuing this conversation with a special evening webcast. Leah, what time are we starting on Thursday?
I think it's right around 7 Central, something like that. I don't know. We have to nail that down.
So stay tuned here for the announcement. You'll get a notification if you're subscribed to us on YouTube. So please make sure you do that. If you're following us on Facebook, you'll get that notification. So go ahead and click those buttons so that you get a notification. We'll be coming live with, I know we've been in a season of announcements. We announced our birth center. We have another really exciting announcement that we hope, again, is a contribution to change in society. Again, we want to be on the ground in the actual healthcare, but we are also looking to change a generation, like how we look at women's healthcare. So stay tuned for that. Some exciting announcements on that evening. Ladies, always, honestly, it's a sensitive topic that we're talking about, hard for some. If this has been challenging, please reach out to us via DM. All three of us will be very happy to guide you and point you in the right direction. And more conversations like this to come. Again, Laura, where can people connect with you to learn more about you and your work?
So you can visit either philomenabirth.com or philomenalife.com. They'll both take you to the same place. And I'm always happy to connect.
Beautiful. All right. We will see you next time on the Fearless Future podcast. Thank you so much, everybody.